Let's get some insights as the chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Organization in Poland, Dr. Tade Omotosho, joins me live via Zoom. Good to have you join us, Dr. Omotosho.
Yeah,
Poland is now Poland is now regarded as the ground zero for this humanitarian crisis, seeing that out of more than 1.5 million refugees that we've seen coming out of this crisis, more than half of them are in Poland. Talk to us about what you're observing in terms of the scale of this humanitarian crisis.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think from my point of view, Poland has been well prepared, or Poland is well prepared for this. Personally, I was at the border a couple of days ago, and it will interest you to know that there is more than enough provision, that has been made available by the Polish government. So what happens usually is once you leave the Ukrainian border and you get to the Polish border, now keep in mind that people spend days staying in the queue just to exit Ukraine and get entry into Poland. And from what we know, in fact, women and children were given priority. So it was a very common story from those that I interacted with, that some stayed even 3 to 4 days, trying to access the two borders, right? But immediately you access the Polish border, there is a border shuttle, a bus that takes you from the border to the shelter, which is like 10-15 minutes away from each other. So at that shelter, there is provision made available. They have food, they have medics, they have sleeping places, and that's where we station as the Nigerian community in Poland, where we're able to take these people from the shelter to the town and provide them accommodation and other welfare. But from what I see, there is a lot of people, volunteers, not just Nigerians, not just Africans, but even Europeans, organizations, non-profit organizations that are stationed at that shelter, willing to provide help to people, transportation, accommodation, and all of that. So there is more than enough supply and provision made available at that shelter.
Absolutely. Humanity is at its best in times of crisis, and we continue to see that play out. But let's talk about Nigerians who are stuck in this crisis. We know that Europe is giving an extended right of stay of about 1 year to refugees from this crisis, but that only applies, we understand, to Ukrainian citizens. There were calls and appeals for these to be changed. Has anything changed? And if not, what would this mean for Nigerians who are not willing to evacuate?
Yeah. Interestingly, I just got up from a Zoom meeting like 10 minutes ago before I came, on live now. We had just finished a meeting with the lawyer, where we had over 100 Nigerians also in that meeting. And the lawyer made it clear to us that currently there is no, specific legal framework or regulation that is in place. But the likely situation will be that everyone, irrespective of your nationality, whether Ukrainian, Nigerian, or Cameroonian or wherever, will likely be allowed to stay. And because the reason is simple, right? There is no way the immigration facility or the immigration employees or staff would be able to process all the applications that will be coming in the next few months. So the idea is that they might actually have a regulation that will say everybody can stay. Whether you're Ukrainian, whether you're Nigerian, you can stay, as long as you have a reason to stay, whether work, study, or other grounds. Yeah. So that's what we know for now, that the likely situation will be that everyone will be able to stay. That has been applied to the Ukrainians, right? But at the same time, there is a huge, influx of Africans, and it would just be impossible for the Home Office to ask everyone to submit an application. They won't be able to handle it. We're talking about thousands upon thousands. So the likely thing is that they would say everyone is able to stay, and that would also extend to the idea that you can move to Germany, you can move to France. So basically, it's going to be an European project, where other European countries would also be involved in assimilating and accepting, in quotes, these refugees.
You seem quite optimistic, but we know that Europe has come under criticism over the years in terms of its treatment of refugees of a certain color. It's sometime last year, I think it was last year, where Europe was criticized for not allowing in refugees from Yemen and Syria. We also saw the pushbacks at the border in this crisis against people of a certain color, especially Nigerians who also went through that. So you seem quite optimistic. But if that is not the case, we're hoping that is the case. But if that is not the case, are there any plans for Nigerians who want to stay back as refugees in Poland and Hungary, but do not have the requisite documents to stay?
Well, I think if you look at the international standards and what the law says, you are a refugee if you are looking for a place to find solace or refuge. It doesn't matter where you're from, as long as you're able to prove it. Now, these Nigerians have been displaced. They used to live in Ukraine. Now there is war, and they needed to find, solace in Poland. Now, Poland cannot, under international regulation, reject them. So what the lawyer said to us this afternoon is that at the moment, if you wish, you can put in an application as a refugee or for asylum. Now, the disadvantage with that is that it will usually take a long period of time. And while you're running that process, they are going to hold on to your passport. Now, whether the outcome will be positive or not will depend on so many things, okay? But again, the issue is even the government do not want you to put in an application for refugee now, because imagine over the last few weeks, over 100,000 people have actually gotten into Polish border. So imagine saying that anybody can apply for refugee right now, and 50,000 people, 30,000 people goes to apply. There's no way they can handle it. So that's what the lawyer keeps saying, and that's why I'm optimistic about it. The lawyer says this is what is likely going to happen. They are going to say everybody can stay, all right? Whether you're Nigerian or you're Ukrainian, as long as you were displaced because of what happened in Ukraine, you can stay. And that way it makes it easy for them just to find a way to, manage the situation. Because once they start saying, okay, go ahead and apply for refugee, which actually you can, but they don't even want to push you to do that because they would not be able to handle it. And it's going to be the same for every other country, whether it's Hungary or Romania or Slovakia. There is an influx of people. And I don't think, European Union is even prepared for that. So everybody's going to be on a playing field. That's what I suppose, whether you're black or white, and that's the way it's going to be for the next 1 year till there is some, better solution.
I wish we have enough time to talk about the Nigerian students who were stranded in Sumi. We understand that the federal government is doing all it can to evacuate them, but transporting them from Sumi seems to be a problem. But I'm sure we will continue to have this conversation with you as long as this crisis lingers. Thank you so much for talking to us, Dr. Tade Omotosho.
Thank you for